Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jaya Gopi Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Natiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Nana Jaya Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Unati Avanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Natiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Shri Radha Madhava ki Shri Nrikesari Bhagavan ki. Can I have a Bhagavad Gita? Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjala Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manu Abhishtam Shtabitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeyaham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I prefer English. Who doesn't understand German? Okay, who doesn't understand English? Oh. Oh, okay. I think it's a 50-50, so I'm going to speak in English. I'm going to speak in English because I'm used to it. And thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on Srimad Bhagavad Gita. I hope with your blessings I can speak something for your pleasure and for my purification. Makchita matgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha Machita matgata prana Bodhayanta parasparam Kathayantas chamam nityam Tushyanti charamanti cha Machita matkata prana Bodhayanta parasparam Kathayantas chamam nityam Tushyanti charamanti cha Machita matkata prana Bodhayanta parasparam Kathayantas chamam nityam Tushyanti charamanti cha Machita matkata prana Bodhayanta parasparam Kathayantas chamam nityam Tushyanti charamanti cha Mataji's Machita matkata prana Bodhayanta parasparam Kathayantas chamam nityam Tushyanti charamanti cha Machita, their minds fully engaged in me. Matkata prana, their lives devoted to me. Bodhayanta, preaching. Parasparam, among themselves. Kathayanta, talking. Cha, also. Mam, about. Me, about me, sorry. Nityam, perpetually. Tushyanti, become pleased. Cha, also. Ramanti, enjoy transcendental bliss. Cha, also. Translation. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Purport. Pure devotees, whose characteristics are mentioned here, engage themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects. The symptoms of the pure devotee are described in this verse specifically. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna, and they take pleasure in discussing Him with other devotees. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself, and in the mature stage, they are actually situated in love of God. Once situated in their transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection which is exhibited by the Lord in His abode. Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of a seed in the heart of the living entity. There are innumerable living entities traveling throughout the different planets of the universe, and out of them there are a few who are fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee and get the chance to understand devotional service. This devotional service is just like a seed, and if it is sown in the heart of a living entity, and if he goes on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, that seed fructifies, just as the seed of a tree fructifies with regular watering. The spiritual plant of devotional service gradually grows and grows until it penetrates the covering of the material universe and enters into the Brahma Yoti effulgence in the spiritual sky. In the spiritual sky also that plant grows more and more until it reaches the highest planet, which is called Goloka Vrindavan, the supreme planet of Krishna. Ultimately, the plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and rests there. Gradually, as a plant grows fruits and flowers, that plant of devotional service also produces fruits, and the watering process in the form of chanting and hearing goes on. This plant of devotional service is fully described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19. It is explained here that when the complete plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, one becomes fully absorbed in love of God. Then he cannot live, even for a moment, without being in contact with the Supreme Lord, just as a fish cannot live without water. In such a state, the devotee actually attains the transcendental qualities in contact with the Supreme Lord. The Srimad Bhagavatam is also full of such narrations about a relationship between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is very dear to the devotees. As stated in Bhagavatam itself in Canto 12, chapter 13, text number 18, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yat Vaishnavanam Priyam. In this narration, there is nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in which the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus, the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. Okay. Actually, I was meditating on this verse 1 or 2 weeks ago when I heard the Bhagavad Gita class here is going on, and I noticed they started with chapter 10. And I was wondering, will they ask me to speak or not? And then I was hoping inside, if they ask me to speak, then I hope I will get this verse. So it's really nice. I thought it was really Krishna's mercy, because this is a very special section in the Bhagavad Gita. And also this verse, I think it's a really amazing verse. Like it's said that these chapters, chapter 10 and chapter 9, it says they're the heart of the Bhagavad Gita. They're like they have the highest knowledge. Even the last chapter was called the most confidential knowledge. And then, surprisingly, if you read the purports, in the beginning of the 10th chapter, Prabhupada says, even though the last chapter was the most confidential knowledge, the knowledge in this chapter is even higher. And maybe even Krishna tells Arjuna, actually, this, I will give you even more confidential knowledge. But this is where we are in Bhagavad Gita. And then this is where we are in the chapters. And then regarding the verses, if you listen to Advaita Simha Prabhu on Friday, he read the last verse, and he was already introducing that we're not only in the most confidential chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, but we're also entering the most important verses of the whole book. And the previous verse, Advaita Simha Prabhu, he was speaking on it. Krishna was telling that I am the source of all spiritual and all material worlds. Everything emanates from me. And the wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So this is how Krishna is presenting the whole philosophy of Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell. And in this verse, what he does, he gives us the sambandha. He gives us what is the relationship between us, Krishna, and what is the relationship. And now in this verse, he establishes the process. So because we can understand, wow, Krishna, he's so great. He's the source of everything material and everything spiritual. Like, we can barely compare to it. Like, I was reading the other day in Chaitanya Charitamrita how all universes, they emanate from Mahavishnu. Like, just like he's sweating, or no, he's not sweating, but like we are sweating, and we just have like bad smell that comes out of our pores, nothing to be proud of. But Krishna is so great, out of his body come unlimited universes. So where's the comparison? There's actually no comparison, and it's very difficult to approach people who are, generally it's very difficult to approach people who are very big. Like, for example, if I would be in, or even in Germany, is Angela Merkel still prime minister? No, I'm out of touch. Who is it now? Scholz. Okay. So if I want to meet Mr. Scholz, it's not easy, because I'm a beggar. I don't have much, but he's the prime minister. So it's very difficult to approach big personalities. But Krishna is so merciful. He likes that we actually stay in touch, that we connect to him. And this is why, after establishing first who are we and who is he in the last verse, now he establishes the process. And he establishes the process with an example of his pure devotees who are already in contact. And in the first part of the purport, Prabhupada gives qualities of those pure devotees. And specifically, he gives 3 qualities. And if you listen attentively, you notice he even gives those 3 qualities twice. Bhagavan ki jai. If you read the purport in the first paragraph, he elaborates on those 3 qualities of the pure devotee. And it's very interesting, because he gives them once and then he gives them again. And generally in poetry, it is considered a mistake if you repeat something. It's a mistake. But if you're emphasizing a point, then it is fine, then it is no mistake. So we know Prabhupada, he's repeating it twice because he wants to emphasize what are the qualities of a pure devotee. And the 3 qualities, they are that a pure devotee, he always thinks about Krishna. There's nothing else in his consciousness. He always thinks about Krishna. And because he always thinks about Krishna, whatever he speaks is also in relationship to Krishna. And then because his mind is in Krishna, his words are in Krishna, he's speaking the truth, therefore naturally also his action followed this example. So he also is always fully engaged in devotional service. So now one person could ask, or I remember if I would read Bhagavad Gita for the first time, then I could ask myself, but why, how does that matter to me, Okay, pure devotees like that, okay, I know. Other people like that, like what is so special? Why is that? Why should we hear that? And I read one article. I like to refer that to one article I read the other day, and that was really interesting. And that was about that in our modern time, in the 21st century, that young people, they're not so much interested anymore in the church, in God, in priests or something like pure devotee, Generally, there's a decline. I notice there's a great decline that people are interested in, worshiping God, worshiping Jesus, or some spiritual person. But what they notice on the other side, there's a great increase of people who are worshiping other human beings. They like to worship like movie stars, rappers, singers, martial artists. So we can see it's very natural actually to look for role models. It's very natural to look for role models, ideal persons. And I was thinking, what is the difference between these role models that get so popular today in comparison to the role model given by Krishna himself, the pure devotee? And I was thinking that all these other role models that are so popular these days, so many people that put like posters up, like in the same way, like we have here pictures of Prahlad Maharaj, pure devotee. We have posters, like pictures all over him. So if you go into a room of young person, generally, like if some young boy, then he will have some poster of some rapper or some this star or that star, or maybe some singer. But the difference, I think the difference is that the devotees, their inside is not different from their outside. While all these other personalities who get so popular today, maybe externally they look very attractive, but internally there's a lot of other things going on. Like, especially now with all social media, like we live in such a bewildering world, people that look so different to what they really are. Like you follow someone on Facebook, on YouTube, Instagram, whatever, it gives a completely different picture. Or you read some magazine about this person, that person's completely different picture of what is really happening in their life. But for pure devotees, it's not like that. The inside what is going on in their consciousness and how they're acting in the world is completely the same. And I was also thinking how actually the devotee is the pure devotee, is the only person who's really happy in this world. All these other people, they might look so happy, especially on social media, but I'm very certain, I'm very confident that they're actually not that happy as they look. And therefore, if we actually want to be real, if we want to be, if you want to be happy, if we take those sort of role models, those sort of examples, that won't be beneficial for us, because those persons which we associate, those persons that we worship, we take upon their qualities, and this is why it's so important. This is why Krishna actually gives us here this speaks about the pure devotee, because if we associate with them, if we think about them, if we try to understand their qualities, then we also get them. Like in the same way how our Krishna Prema Rupa Prabhu was mentioning very nicely in the Guru Disciple course, that generally a student, he gets the qualities of his spiritual, like he gets the qualities of his guru, all the successes because of his guru. He was giving the example of Prabhupada, who became so great, who did so much, just because of the mercy of his guru. And we can also see how he was pointing out that that our success in ISKCON lies in our association, our worship of Prabhupada. And one second. So we can see that it's very important that we choose wisely whom we are following, because naturally those persons who are not interested in hearing about the pure devotee, not interested about hear their qualities, they will worship someone else, and they will take upon his qualities or their qualities, and they might not exactly be what they seem to be at first. And I was thinking there's also many other nice examples of persons who would take upon the qualities of the persons whom they're worshiping, whom they're glorifying. And I was thinking actually of Mahabharata, but no, let's bring that example also. For example, in Mahabharata, there's the story of Ekalavya. Everyone knows Ekalavya? How many know Ekalavya? Okay, so Ekalavya, because we're speaking of Bhagavad Gita, so Mahabharata is the history before and after Bhagavad Gita. So Ekalavya, he wanted to become a great archer, and he just started worshipping Dronacharya. And Dronacharya, he was the best martial arts teacher. But unfortunately, Dronacharya didn't want to. He didn't want to teach Ekalavya for some other reasons. So then what Ekalavya did, he just started to meditate on Dronacharya. He started to make a murti, like a form from him. He started to worship him. And he really tried to absorb his consciousness in Dronacharya. And just by this act of really meditating, worshipping him, associating so intimately with him, he actually developed also those martial arts skills. And I was thinking of another example that's maybe more like in our day-to-day life. I remember there's one Mataji in Melbourne where I come from. She's now a little bit older already. She's like maybe 50 years now. But she is a disciple of Rohini Sutta Prabhu and or Rohini Sutta Maharaj. And she was thinking that she wanted to do something special for ISKCON, for her guru, and she wanted to distribute Srimad Bhagavatam sets. But she's not a book distributor, for sure. I mean, she's a very good cook, but she's not a book distributor. But she had this vision, this mission, this vision. She wanted to do that. So what she told me is she just every day she started put a picture of her guru. She started worshiping and meditating upon it, on the qualities of her spiritual master. And then suddenly in that marathon, she distributed 5 Bhagavatam sets, which is pretty amazing. So we can see how this principle works. That if we have some ideal person, some role model, someone we glorify, someone we meditate upon, we take upon their qualities. And we can also see that the opposite is true, that if we have a person that we like really adore, that we're really enthusiastic about, that we celebrate and we always think about, and if that person doesn't have such great qualities, then we also take upon those qualities in a negative way. And that's something that we have to be really careful about. Like, there's good association, the association of the sadhus, of the saintly persons, of the pure devotees, it is most likely the most powerful thing in spiritual life. It is that only thing that can really skyrocket your spiritual life. If you want to take off in your spiritual life, you just have to associate with the devotees. You find those devotees who really exhibit the good qualities, who are like this, who always think of Krishna, who only speak about Krishna, and who are fully engaged. You look for those devotees, you start associating with them, and then your spiritual life will flourish. But on the other hand, if you associate too much with persons who don't have these qualities, who are materialistic, then that can really slow you down. And in the Nectar of Instruction, Bhaktivinoda Srila Rupa Goswami, he gives 6 obstacles in our spiritual practice. Does anyone know the 6 obstacles? Ja, Asanga Tyag, Asatsanga. Wie heißt in Sanskrit? Okay, yeah, I just remembered in English. My Sanskrit got a little rusty. But there's 6 obstacles, and the first one is that one person who's over-endeavoring, for mundane achievements. The second is the person who's over-collecting. He's collecting much more than he needs. And the third is that the person who is speaking things which are just mundane, with not just speaking nonsense. And the fourth is the association of worldly-minded people. The fifth is being attached to the rules and regulations just for the sake of following them, means being very ritualistic, not being real. And the last one is being greedy. So of all those 6 obstacles in our spiritual life, Sri Rupa Goswami points out that the association of worldly-minded people is the greatest, is the greatest obstacle. So we can note that, those 2 points, that how the association of pure devotees can really lift us up, while the association of materialistic people can slow us down a lot. And then the second point that Prabhupada mentions in the purport is he gives the process how we, as not as pure devotees, we as materialistic devotees, can come to the platform of being a pure devotee. And he gives that example of the Bhakti Lata, of the creeper of devotional service. And it's very nice if you read it up, and Chaitanya Charitamrita is mentioned here in chapter 19. We hear about the creeper of devotional service, and it's a very nice analogy. And we just heard, how we have the seed of bhakti in our heart, and by hearing and chanting, we can nourish this plant, and eventually we'll grow and reach Krishna in the spiritual world. But if you analyze this analogy deeply, there's actually a lot to it. There's the earth, which represents the fertile ground in our heart. And what is that fertile ground? That fertile ground is faith, that we have faith in the spiritual process. And that faith is more than just some blind faith or something like that. Actually, I find a better word than faith is trust. Because when you see something that works, and it works again and again, you develop actually trust. It's more than just blind faith. You're actually really serious that it works. So in the same way also, we need to have a fertile ground in our heart. And then that seed with a fertile ground, it can grow when it gets water, like a plant needs water and sunlight. That means when it gets nourishment. And the nourishment that is here described, it is chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And Prabhupada writes the whole Mahamantra. So it means it's very important to chant. And then the second is to hear. And I want to speak a little more about hearing and chanting, but there's one more thing that is still also important. So you have your fertile ground in the shape of faith, and then you have the seed of devotional service, of seed of Krishna Bhakti, and then you water it with hearing and chanting. But then there's 2 things that you need to watch out for. And one thing that you need to watch out for is the weeds that also grow along with your bhakti for Krishna. Because sometimes we're nurturing something in our heart and we think it is our devotion to Krishna, but actually it is something else. For example, if it might be that we like Krishna consciousness because we like devotional service because we feel we're getting recognized. Or now that I'm a devotee, everyone is recognizing my good qualities. I like to do the service because then everyone can see how great I am. And it might, at first it looks like bhakti, but as the time passes, we can realize that it is not bhakti, actually there's something else, some selfish desire that is growing in our hearts. So we have to take out the weeds. And that's part of the process. It's a long journey, at least for me. When we start our spiritual life, usually we think, 1 year and I'm a pure devotee, I'm nearly there. But as the time passes more and more, we realize actually it's quite a long journey. And that actually means we're progressing when we can see, oh wow, there's so many anarthas in my heart, so many weeds have sprung up, I have to take them out. And in the beginning, that's a little bit scary, but actually it's a sign of progress because we understand where we're at and which work we have to do. And then another thing that we have to do, we not only have to, have the fertile ground, water the plant, take out the weeds, it's also good to put up a fence. And why we have to put up the fence? For the elephants. In Germany, there's no elephants. I don't think so. In Australia, you have kangaroos. So in Australia, we need to put very big fences. The fences in Australia, we have to put them like at least 2 meters. So the kangaroos can't jump. But in India, they have elephants. And there's a problem with elephants, especially if they go mad. Hands up, who has seen a mad elephant? Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Are you from South India? Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's dangerous, isn't it? It's very dangerous. Mad elephants are very dangerous. So this Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the elephant, it represents offenses. That we have to be careful as we practice that we don't commit offenses. Offenses to the holy name, to the Vaishnavas, to Krishna. Of all of them, offense to the Vaishnavas is the worst. So we have to watch out for them, because if we do something that's very not right, for example, if I go and insult the devotees, if I speak bad about the devotees, if I do something on that line, it is compared to a mad elephant who just entered my garden and he just destroys everything. So we have to watch out. We can speak much more about the mad elephant, about the fence. The fence also, it means that we have to protect ourselves from certain things. We follow some rules and regulations to protect ourselves from bad influences, like in a way that we don't eat bad things. We don't do intoxication, things like that. But we could go on speaking. I wanted to focus for the last bit about hearing and chanting, because this is what Prabhupada really emphasized in the purport. And in terms of hearing, in the 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj, he gives the 9 processes of devotional service. And what many people, I think, at least what I missed many times, is when he gives those 9 processes, Prabhupada in the purport, he writes in the very beginning that of all the 9 processes, chanting is the most important. But for a person who does not hear properly, he won't get the result from chanting. So actually, he says, chanting is the most important, but, so actually, there's a question, chanting really the most important, or hearing? Hearing definitely also is very, very important. And we don't do it here. Here in the morning, you chant every day, Trinad Apisunichena. You chant this nice verse about, how we should chant the holy name of the Lord. In Melbourne, we do the opposite. we chant a verse which describes how we should not chant the holy name of the Lord. We chant Bahu Jamma Kariya Shravanam Kirtana Mahutana Pai Krishna Pade. It has been a while. Bahu Jamma Kariya Yadi Shravana Kirtana Tahutana Pai Krishna Pada Prema Dana. So we chant this verse, and it means that a person, he can chant Bahu Janma for thousands of lifetimes. You can chant for thousands of lifetimes, okay? Every morning you get up, go to Mangalati, chant your japa 2 hours, every day, thousands of lifetimes, You will not get the desired result if you keep committing the offenses, if you don't do it properly, if you don't understand what you're doing. And I hear in other instances also often emphasize that we chant the Mahamantra, but it's important to have Sambandha Gyan, knowledge of our relationship with Krishna. This is what this verse establishes, that we really have to understand who is Krishna, who are we, what is our relationship. And if we do that, then we can actually progress a lot. Then we can also progress very quickly. But if we don't do that, then it will be very, very difficult. This is why Prabhupada, in the third part of the purport, he also emphasizes hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So hearing, I really want to emphasize. And then last, because I think I have to finish at 8 or 7. Okay, cool. So then the next point that Prabhupada emphasizes, we have hearing and then chanting. And I was thinking about it, what does it really mean to chant? Like kirtanam, what does it mean? And does it mean like we chant this verse, Trinat api sunichena tarora piseshuna manina manadena kirtanya sadahari. So this kirtanam, does it mean that I sit down, I get the harmonium, I chant kirtan, everyone's Haribo, Haribo. Does that mean, is that kirtanam? Or what does it really mean? And actually kirtanam, it means to glorify Krishna. Actually that is kirtanam. And we can see sometimes it looks like people, they do kirtan, but maybe it's not, like Narada Muni, before he became Narada Muni. He was a Gandhava. And he was thinking he's doing kirtan. He's thinking he's doing kirtan, but actually he was not, he had his objective wrong. You can hear it also in Srimad Bhagavatam. He has objective wrong. He was not doing it to please Krishna. He had some ulterior motive, and he did it little without this connection. He did it in the wrong way, and therefore it was not kirtan. So real kirtan means to glorify Krishna, to put ourselves to the side, not to glorify anyone else, not to have any ulterior motive, but really to glorify Krishna. And that not only, it doesn't mean that we sing a kirtan, it can be in any way. And this is why this verse also says, Kirtanya Sada Hari. Like we should chant all the time, 24 hours. It doesn't have to be that we go around all the time, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We can do it, nothing wrong in it, but that's not the only way. Actually, it means that whatever we tell, whatever we speak, it is always in relationship to Krishna. And there's quite some flexibility actually in what you can say in relationship to Krishna. I notice some devotees, they have like this much spectrum, and some devotees go a little wider. I think it's up to us where to draw the line. But I think Prabhupada actually, he was quite liberal in that sense. Because, for example, sometimes he was very strict, but in that sense he was quite liberal, because I want to share one pastime to give an example of that. One time he was on a morning walk, and he was just walking, preaching to his disciples, and then one old man came by. And the old man, he was quite old, really like, maybe he has a few years left. And then the devotees, they thought, oh yes, Prabhupada's going to preach to him, death, old age, that's disease, now is the best time, But then Prabhupada just saw the old man, he said, good morning. And that's it. He just said good morning, and that's it. Then the disciples passed, Prabhupada passed, the old man also was good morning. And then the devotee is like, but Prabhupada, why you didn't say Hare Krishna? You could have heard the holy name, just before his death. You could preach to him. No, Prabhupada, he explained that, no, look, he's an old man. We're like in this big group. I would say good morning. This is the way how you greet each other in this country, and he will appreciate us, for this small thing. He will appreciate us, and I think there's a lot of depth to it actually. I think it means that sometimes when we meet people, especially in the beginning, I was really much like that. When someone walks in the door, preaching center in Melbourne, and immediately I come to them, I preach to them, I give them the beads, I'm ready to shave their head, everything set up. But maybe that's not the best for them in the long term. Actually, maybe it's better first to establish a relationship with them. First, make them feel welcome. First, try to preach to them on the level that they're at. Like they taught me this in Melbourne, and I always think about it, is that when you have a baby and you're responsible for it, then you treat him very, very gently and very considerate. So for example, you feed him, but you don't feed him too much. Otherwise, the baby will just get indigestion and will get sick. But you don't feed him too little also, otherwise the baby will starve. So you just feed him the right amount. And so in the same way also in our preaching, I think it's very important to understand where different people are at and how much we can give them. And I think that's the art of becoming a preacher. This is the art actually of doing kirtan, you know. Because my spiritual master, he told me that in the morning you chant your japa, and that's your internal kirtan. And then during the rest of the day, you go out and you preach. You distribute books and, you know, you preach, and that's your external kirtan. Like this, you do kirtan all the time. And I think that's very important for us to understand, you know, to have this knowledge about what really kirtan is, and to go out and share this in consideration of how much other people can take. And was there something else that I wanted to add? Oh yes. There's so much to speak about Kirtanam. Like there's so much, especially for me, because I like to speak so much and I have a tendency to speak so much nonsense, so much prajalpa. And this is why I was thinking about this verse, because it tells how devotees, they always speak about each other, they try to enlighten each other, and they speak about Krishna. And I think it's a very important topic that we utilize our speaking power only for kirtan, only to glorify. And that means if you only do kirtan, then it's one thing that we don't do. We don't do prajalpa. Means we don't speak about nonsense. And I remember I was in New York a few months ago, and do you remember Yugal Kishore Prabhu? Yugal Kishore. Okay. So there's a Yugal. He's a temple president in Michigan. He's a Radhanath Swami disciple, very senior brahmachari. And I had one really awkward incident, because after the morning program, I sat in class. I went to do my japa. I sat in class, and then naturally, if we get so much Krishna, the full morning program, like 4 or 5 hours, then sometimes, especially in the beginning of our spiritual life, then our mind sometimes feels, oh no, maybe I need something else, something material or something. So then at breakfast, I thought it was my time, so I just started speaking, just nonsense, you know, just like I went a little bit off the board, and then he was walking past. And he just walked past and he just saw it. And I could understand, oh no, you know, that's not so good, because especially when we are around senior devotees, then we feel more inspired in our spiritual life. And especially around senior devotees, it's always good to have better etiquette, try to show our best side. And so he walked past, and then the next day he was giving class. And then in the class he said one point that is still with me. And he said that you can actually see by what persons are speaking if they're reading the books. Because naturally, we speak about what is in our mind, you know. So naturally, if we just like all the time reading the news, reading Corona, this, that, here, something like, if we just completely get absorbed about it, something material, something external, then we will also speak about it. But then if we take some time to read Srila Prabhupada's books, then naturally, we will think about it, and that's also what we're going to speak. So this kirtanam and so chanting and hearing, they're very, very connected. And we can see that if we read the books, then naturally also our speech will get better. And also, that was the point that I wanted to mention earlier, when my guru told me to do my internal kirtan in the morning in terms of my japa and my external kirtan in terms of the sankirtan, they're also very connected. Actually, our japa and the rest of our day, especially what we speak, I find especially what we speak, they're so important. Like, we can't expect to just speak about whatever the whole day, just do whatever we want, and then sit down and chant good rounds. It's not going to happen, you know. It's not going to happen. But if we take that and make an effort, for example, let's say tomorrow, like it's a bit too late for today, so make an effort tomorrow, I will try to control my mind, and I will just try to speak things of value, things about Krishna, things related. I will meet others, I just try to give them as much Krishna consciousness as they can take, even if it's just good morning. I just give them as much as they can take. And if we do that for the whole day, I guarantee you the next morning your japa will be so much better. Like I always notice with myself. And I will finish, but there's one last point on chanting that I also like to highlight that I was thinking about, and that is later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, speaks about the different, about the modes of nature, about how to behave, and about austerities, and he speaks also about the austerity of speech. And he gives 4 points, which are really, really nice to meditate upon. And those 4 points Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, but one of my favorite philosophers, before coming to Krishna consciousness, he also gave them. He gave 3 of them. There was Socrates. You know Socrates? Yeah, Prabhupada actually said he was not too far away from our philosophy. Like, he was not too far away. He also understood about reincarnation. He also understood about the soul. And he was really real, because the people in ancient Greece, they thought he was polluting the youth because he's telling them, you're not the body, you're the soul, It happened those days also. He told them about reincarnation. So the people in ancient Greece, they told him that you're polluting the youth. You have to stop that or we kill you. But he said he was so convinced that he's the soul, so they forced him to drink poison. And they asked him, before you drink poison, do you have anything that you want to do, before we kill you and we burn you or we borrow you? And he was so convinced he's not the body, he told them, look, I'm not going to die. You can try to catch me if you can, And then he drank the poison and left. So it's pretty cool. And what he said, he came up with, similar to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, at the end he speaks about 3 things to watch our speech. Have you heard of those 3 things before? It's called, before you speak, you can do this triple filter test, So he gives that example of one of his friends coming from Athens, in ancient Greece, Athens. Athens is the capital, so everyone's into gossip. So his friend comes ready to gossip, and then Socrates asks him, okay, is what you're going to tell, I want to hear you, but first I want to see if you can pass these 3 tests. So he asks him, first question, is what you're going to tell me true? Are you sure it is true? And his friend was thinking, oh, actually, look, it's not 100% true, but I hear it from someone else. I said, okay, fair enough, that's okay. Now, tell me, is it something nice? Is it something pleasing to hear? And then he said, oh, actually, yeah, it's not that pleasing to hear. It's not that nice, actually. I said, okay, that's still fair enough. Maybe not 100% sure if it's true. Maybe it's not so pleasing to hear. But let me ask you the last question. Is it beneficial for me? And his friend, he had his head down. Or actually, it's not even beneficial for you. So then Socrates said, okay, in that sense, maybe you don't have to tell me. If you don't think it's true. If it's not beneficial, and if it's not nice, then maybe better not speak at all, So also we can do this to our mind. I try sometimes, I'm not doing very good, but I try. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, interestingly enough, 3,000 years earlier, to Socrates in ancient Greece, he gives the same 3 things, but he gives a 4th one. So he said that our speech, it should be truthful, it should be pleasing, and it should also be beneficial to others. And have a guess, what's the 4th one? Yeah, it's related to it. It should be truthful, it should be pleasing, it should be beneficial, and also uplifting. Yeah, that's nice. Maybe we added a 5th one, You should write Krishna a letter. No, actually, he says that it should be in accord to the Vedas, with the Vedic revelations, with the Vedic wisdom, and we should regularly recite Vedic literature. That means we should learn some shlokas. I'm really bad on my shlokas, but since I'm here in Simachalam, I think 2 devotees told me to be a bit more serious about the reading the books and learning some shlokas. So I learned 1 shloka that is really related to this, so I like to share it with you, and that is a very nice verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and that is Bhakti Paresha Nubhavo Viraktir Anyatra Chai Zadrika Eka Kalaha Prabhatya Manasya Yatashnatashyu Tushti Pushti Kshut Anayonugasham. And this verse, it describes bhakti. Bhakti, it means devotion to Lord Krishna, bhakti, like devotion, paresha, like param isha, the supreme controller. So devotion to the supreme controller, devotion to Krishna, anubhavo, direct perception of Krishna, and viraktir, detachment from everything material. Those three, they occur simultaneously in a person who practices spiritual life. And if you read very closely, even in the word for word, it's not a person who's perfect in spiritual life. It is a person actually who's just trying to practice. So a person who's just trying to practice, he gets three things naturally. He gets devotion to Krishna, direct perception, and detachment from everything else. In the same way, like a person who's hungry, when he eats, he gets nourishment, satisfaction, and also he gets relief from his hunger. So I like to finish the class with that note that here it describes the pure devotees, all the magnanimous qualities. It describes the process, and actually Krishna consciousness is so amazing that even for a beginner, if we just try to apply ourselves to the process, if we just start practicing, then very quickly we will get these results in terms of that we understand who's Krishna, we get devotion to him, and also we get naturally detached from all the other material things. And that is so important. I hear this for the first time in my life, but it was amazing that Krishna Prem Rupa Prabhu, he said that the higher taste in Krishna consciousness is not a luxury. Actually, it's completely necessary. Actually, all of us, we have to, develop this higher taste. And actually, I think it's very easy, especially in a temple like this. You do so many different services, so you really understand, what is my nature, which service gives me taste, and I think if we find something in Krishna consciousness that we like, some devotees they like reading, some devotees they like chanting, some devotees like cleaning, some book distribution, harinam. There's so much scope. I'm sure in that scope we all find something that we really like. And then if we just try to follow that natural inclination and we just do it more and more and more, we can get more and more taste. Like for me, I remember book distribution is one thing. In the beginning I was a little fussed about, and also if I don't do it for a long time, I always have to break the ice again. But actually you can get more and more taste from it, And even if you're completely horrible, if you just once experience this taste, if you just keep doing it, it will increase more and more. Or for example, kirtan. Like for me, I always love kirtan, but I'm not a musician, it's not my nature, but because I like it, I try to nourish it. And amazing things can happen. And the same also for reading the books, for everything in spiritual life. So, yeah, I like to finish on that note. I think we covered the purport. And if you have any questions or comments or corrections, please, now is your time. Okay. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki? Jai.